If you're like me, and you've watched Clarence for a long time, then you're probably aware of what I'll be talking about today. The last time I talked about the show was greeted with an okay reception. Plus, it is always great to come back to this show in a review format. I'm Papercut, and let's take a look at Lil Buddy as we get closer to review 25. The episode starts off with an advert for this doll called the Lil Buddy. It shows this kid having a fun time with the doll, as the music in the background complements the childlike nature of the ad. Right off the bat, we're shown that the doll plays a very important role in the child's life, which will be mirrored with Clarence in this episode. What's very interesting about this is that the other kid in this advert looks very uncomfortable with the whole situation, which I honestly would too. I mean, look at this thing. What's very clever about this opening is that it basically mirrors everything that happens in this episode, because as we see when the video ends, the kids in the class shared the same sentiment as the kid in the video. Heck, even Miss Baker was taken aback. Clarence is also heavily attached to his little buddy, just like the advert showed us. Overall, it's a really neat way to bring us into the plot, no frills, no extra info that we didn't need, just straight to the point. So after the banger intro that this show has, the episode's title card really caught my attention for some reason. It wouldn't feel out of place in a liminal space video if I'm being totally honest. Clarence goes around introducing different people to his little buddy. He's shown to be very excited and passionate about it. Now obviously, because Clarence isn't the best communicator, he ends up pushing people away. Even Sumo doesn't want to be involved in his fantasies this time. Clarence and Sumo have always had this like-minded nature, but this episode just highlights how out of place Clarence is, especially for Sumo to just say that he doesn't want to play with Clarence. One element of this episode that's important to point out is that Clarence is just a passionate kid, but at the same time, doesn't want to hurt anyone in any way. As we'll see later on, he does things that hurt people emotionally and sometimes physically. What makes Clarence relatable here is that he doesn't mean to do those things. He just makes mistakes, which for a kid of his age is a completely understandable trait to have. And for him as a character, it's what makes him such a believable protagonist, and the audience can relate to that, which is why when he makes this kid cry here, he doesn't look like a complete jerk. It was just a mistake. Unfortunately for him, this teacher doesn't see it that way and gives Clarence 5 minutes timeout. We get this really cool time-lapse scene as Clarence begins to feel like 5 minutes is lasting a lifetime.
Your 5 minutes was up 5 minutes ago! Well, that's the way the cookie crumbles, huh? Get back to class!
The main catalyst for Clarence's behavior is that this teacher here didn't let him go at the right time, causing him to miss recess. Now you might say that it makes him look like a crybaby. You have to understand, he's like, what, 10 years old at this point? I would understand why he's pissed that he missed recess, because this bitch right here doesn't know how to keep time. Like, how is he supposed to know that the 5 minutes was up? He doesn't have a watch or a way of telling time. Clarence returns to class in a pretty bad mood. The rest of the class is playing with this slime thingy, but he isn't having any of it. Sumo and Jeff see this and try to cheer him up, but to no avail. Miss Baker also notices this, and she's going to come back later on in this episode, so props to the team for adding this extra detail in here. Now, if you haven't seen this episode before watching this video, you may be thinking, Paper, how does this turn into a dark episode? Well, don't you worry my friend, because it's about that time. We return to Clarence's home, where he's seen venting to himself about what happened that day. The rain and the lightning sets this all up to be an intense scene. We never really get to see Clarence this angry and upset, and you can already tell that the situation has taken a real bite into his mental state.
Why didn't you say something? How about because I wasn't allowed to?
His dialogue is essentially directed at the teacher who didn't let him go, basically saying that he couldn't have told her it was time because he wasn't allowed to say anything, which is a valid argument. He then turns his attention to Lil Buddy. Tiny animation error to point out, but the lights going from on to off in this scene without real good transition was kinda distracting, but not a huge issue. So Clarence, in a fit of rage not usually seen from him, does this.
Sorry, buddy. This is how the cookie crumbles.
He projects all of his anger out onto the doll and ends up breaking it. Now, while in fairness it was on its last legs, Clarence still feels immense guilt for what he's done. To others, this is just a doll that can easily be replaced. To Clarence, Lil Buddy is almost like a real person to him. It was shown throughout the episode that it's extremely important to him, so it makes loads of sense for him to feel the way he does, because to him, he's just damaged something that gave him joy. He ends up riding his bike in the rainstorm to dispose of the doll as a sort of burial. Along his way, he splashes Miss Baker with water, who immediately notices it's Clarence. Again, pretty good foreshadowing here. He buries the doll, and this cinematic nature of the sequence really adds to its dramatic nature. The small details like this shot of the hand, and this one from the perspective of the doll being buried, all fits together so well. The soundtrack in the background is also a nice touch. Fast cut to the next half of the episode, where we get this scene of Clarence's mom trying to cheer him up, but failing.
Hey, Clarence. Hey, what did the fisherman say to the magician? Pick a card, any card. Pick a card. C-O-D, like the fish, you know?
This really highlights how deep his depression is. Usually his mom always finds ways to cheer him up, and this is shown throughout the entire series, but here, she can't. We get this montage of Clarence becoming more and more miserable as time goes on. It's okay, pretty functional. The small detail of the weather becoming more gloomy as he gets more sad was a nice touch, and some of the actions he's able to pull off here are so ridiculous. Like, I don't know how he managed to pull this off, but respect to him nonetheless. There's also the song that plays in the background, which is essentially a spoof of Strange Things Are Happening to Me from Toy Story.
I used to run this rebel, now they all run around me. Living the life, things were just the way they should be.
It fits well with the whole theme of the episode, and it was quite a smart move for them to spoof this specific song, as both versions are in a piece of media where toys are involved, so props to the writers again. I will admit that it is quite heavy-handed with its writing, and there isn't much space for thinking about what you're hearing, or any clever metaphors of some sort. While Clarence isn't trying to be super clever or meta, it's more just trying to tell good childhood stories. I guess it isn't the worst thing for this song to be so simple. If you like it, you like it. If you don't, it's pretty short, so you won't have to deal with it for a long time anyway. Clarence sells all of his toys, gets rid of all of his decorations, and gets sent to detention extremely often. He eventually goes full-on emo mode. Just look at him. The black Air Force energy is all around him. He becomes more and more of an outcast at school, as everyone is afraid of him and his sudden transformation. Everyone except for...
Hey, what happened to you? You got, like, cool. Hey, I mean it. You're like the new tough guy in school who's like totally dead inside.
I heard that.
When you did that thing with that was top notch. Hey, how'd you like to team up, huh?
Belson is an interesting case here, because since he acts as Clarence's bully throughout the show, it's kind of ironic for him to like him now. What's so fascinating about this dynamic is that Belson respects Clarence for who he is now, when the only thing he's doing is encouraging his depressive state, which is something you should never do. Clarence isn't acting like this to be cool, he's acting like this because of people like Belson. He was once an outcast for being weird and goofy, even before we were introduced to Lil Buddy, to now being an outcast because he's in a bad place in his life. He didn't want any of this to happen, and his self-hate only grows because of these factors. He even goes as far as taking out his actions on one of his only real friends in Jeff, dressing up in a full Lil Buddy costume. There's this sense of traumatic comedy for me. At one point, I thought it was hilarious that he got a full costume, but then I remembered why he did it, and it became more dark. I feel the next few scenes really deserve to be shown to you rather than me explaining them, because I feel like I really couldn't do them any justice. Let's just hope I don't get copyright striked. Again.
Buddy's hand, just stop. Little Buddy's hand is my little hand. Ooey.
What's up? Guess you saved the last pants for...
Don't condone violence.
You die. You suck at this game.
Everything about this scene, from the last line I played, which goes into my point about how Clarence doesn't want to be admired for his actions, to the sheer satisfaction I got from watching this man get decked in the face with enough power to get a KO in reboxing. This scene is just so powerful. He seems to have finally done too much, as rumors start spreading that he's getting some sort of special punishment, which actually turns out to be a really great conversation with his teacher, Miss Baker. I love it, and it really shows off how good of a character and teacher she can be. She genuinely cared about the well-being of Clarence, and went as far as bringing his doll back, as well as giving him the 5 minutes of recess that he lost. Honestly, super underrated character.
Ever after?
The creepy-ass music kicks back in as Clarence and his doll are reunited, and that was Lil Buddy. The storytelling was top-notch, with some minor details that I didn't even notice when I first watched the episode years ago. There were some funny jokes here and there, but overall the episode is honestly the darkest Clarence can get, which makes it stand out to all the other episodes. We got some pretty great character interaction, and overall it was a good experience, although it didn't leave me in the happiest mood ever. Thank you for watching, I hope you have a good day, and take care.